What's going on, guys? Welcome to Hit Talks, baseball's mental performance podcast. I'm your host, Vic Ferrante. In this episode, I have a conversation with Eddie Saucedo, who is a current ball player, only 18 years old, with a tremendous passion for learning about the mental side of the game, and host of Thought Force podcast. You could also find him on Instagram under the same handle. This podcast will be broken into 3 separate segments, so please be sure to tune in for part 2 and part 3 in the coming weeks. So without further ado, here is part 1 of my conversation with Eddie Saucedo.
You just tell me a little bit about yourself. I knew you played back in the day. Kind of how did that evolve into where you are now? And what are you doing right now? And who are you working with?
Let's see. Well, I'll go back first. Just like pretty much every guy you've probably ever talked to, and probably yourself, started playing ball as early as we can remember. Always had a great work ethic, always put in a lot of physical work. My dad was a professional athlete, so I developed a lot of that, took on a lot of that work ethic. He was there to support me in my baseball. And so over the years, I developed physically, had some pretty good physical abilities, power and arm. Like, I'm a big guy. I was always stronger than most of my teammates in terms of velocity and power. So I always excelled in those areas. I was a two-way player. But there was one kind of, throughout my whole career, even from as early as 9 years old, there was a common theme. And that was my attitude. That I had. There were stressors in my personal life, family, divorce, and it just wasn't handled very well by my family, especially being that I was like 8, 9 years old. So I think that's kind of developed a lot of confusion, frustration, stress, and ultimately it led to me expressing it like on the ball field, right? So if I didn't get, it was my escape being on the field, but then when it didn't go my way, I would get frustrated and I would vent. I was the guy that didn't keep it inside. So I'd slam bats, I'd, kick stuff and punch stuff, and, just one of those guys. And so anyways, that was kind of the underlying theme my whole career, but I always continued to excel at the lower levels. Anyways, fast forward through high school, was a two-way player, got drafted as a pitcher out of high school by the Houston Astros back in 2003. Ended up deciding not to sign. It was a lower rounds. Went to a junior college, put up pretty good numbers, led the league home runs and RBIs as a two-way guy as a freshman. And funny enough, I got drafted as a pitcher again, even though I pitched, but I just wasn't excelling in the same way. I put most of my focus was on hitting because I loved to hit, and I'd hit monster home runs, and I had so much power as a hitter compared to my peers that for me, from my perspective, it was like it was a no-brainer. I threw pretty hard on the mound. I did pretty well, and I could have been better had I focused more on that. But obviously, I would have been spread too thin to put 100% into both things. So I definitely focused more on the hitting. But anyways, I did great things at my junior college, set records, and eventually got into the Hall of Fame there. So fast forward again, my sophomore year, I got drafted 15th round by the Colorado Rockies. And then that's when I had joined up with Michael McHenry, one of your former guests. Did pretty well there too. But again, there was that underlying theme, attitude, temper. And I've said it before. I was like, it's kind of it was like a blessing in disguise that I showed my frustration, because I wouldn't have got away with it. Eventually, I wasn't going to be able to get away with it. So it had to be addressed, whether it's by an organization. They're saying, "Hey, we got to figure out what's going on. We got to get you some help," or personally. Say, you know what, I can't have relationships with people and be so like explosive over things that are just so minute, So my second year, I ended up being an all-star, midseason all-star with McHenry. Actually, we're both all-stars in 2007. But again, that was a really rough year. Like, I had some really big blow-ups, off-field stuff, was coming into the on field. And
Yeah.
I think I just had unrealistic expectations. I knew my potential, as everybody has a greater potential, and I knew that it was there, but I was getting in my own way
Yep.
because of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can perform at their best if they are blowing up every time they go over,
Right.
and every time you strike out against a guy throwing 98 with a 91 mile an hour slider,
Yep.
like, you're not going to go last very long. Like, that's just the game. Like, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to look bad sometimes.
Right.
But I would, of course, make it worse by blowing up and carrying it either onto the field or into my next at bat. And so anyways, I played a couple more years, or actually one more year after that, 3 years total with the Rockies. And again, the following year, I came in kind of with like a refreshed mindset, and I started off good, but I didn't have the foundation of like mental skills
Right.
and perspective and just the mental maturity to be like, to do some personal growth. I like lost some
Mm-hmm.
weight. I got in better shape, and it was like, oh, I'm new and improved. Coming to spring training, all positive. But then when the adversity started to hit, maybe at first I was okay, but then it just started to pile up, and then I would eventually just kind of blow up.
Right.
I butted heads a lot with my coach the year 2008. Maybe you've heard of him, Jerry Weinstein.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and it's funny because I think back and it's like, man, this guy's preached all the things that I'm talking about now.
Mm.
Like, the mindset and like the routines and the habits and just being a student of the game. And it's just so funny how it comes full circle.
Right.
But I was that guy where it was like, I kind of knew better. I thought I knew better. And so we just butted heads. And I would make excuses. I would blame. I wouldn't take accountability for my own faults, and basically I just wasn't very mature. I wasn't as
Right.
mature as I thought I was.
Yep.
Anyways, then following spring training, I ended up getting released. And then I got into independent baseball, and then I bounced around for like another 7 years. First year, I had a great year in independent ball. Never got picked up. Following year, got injured like early in the season, and from that point on, I was never really the same.
Mm.
I would come back in like better physical shape, but missing time and just personal stuff, off the field stuff, it just kept weighing on me.
Yep.
To the point where I could no longer really match up to the player that I was, at least in terms of like performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then eventually I called it quits at the age of 30. Like, I got released one last time. I got released after 70 at bats. I had the only 2 home runs on the team. I was hitting 320 one week, and then I had a
Wow.
bad week, and I was hitting 230.
Mm-hmm.
So it was only 70 at bats. So you one bad week, you plummet.
Yeah.
And then I got released, and then it was like, hey, time to move on with my life. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Thought about coaching. Volunteered a little bit with a local high school, and just my mind wasn't there. I wasn't ready to coach. I was
Mm-hmm.
bitter that my career didn't end the way that I had hoped, that I didn't achieve what I was set out to achieve. And I come to find out later, is like, I just didn't really believe in myself deep down, or at least
Mm-hmm.
anymore at the end. And that was the deciding factor. I just didn't have it here and in here anymore, which meant I didn't believe in others. So it's
Yeah.
like, I almost had this thought, and it's like a horrible thought, but I was like, well, if I couldn't do it, why can these high school kids, these little kids do it? It's like, I
Right.
had that kind of like if I can't, how can they? They
Mm-hmm.
can't do the things that I could do. And then eventually I started to grow up. I started to look to improve my life personally, not related to baseball. And then I got into personal development, then started learning about the mental side, and it's just like, oh my God, I needed this in baseball.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, everybody was telling me, you got an attitude, but nobody actually told me, how do I fix my attitude?
Mm-hmm.
How do I change my attitude? Think positive, have fun, like all these things. Like, who knows how to do that? Nobody teaches
Right.
it.
Yep.
Then I started learning about guys, mental performance coaches. Then I think back the Rockies, we had a mental skills coach that I worked with briefly. And I actually saw some results, like working with
Mm-hmm.
him, doing a couple of different tools, a couple of different focal points and deep breath and that type of stuff. And actually hit 300 for a month and made the All-Star team that
Wow.
year. But again, I reverted back to my old habits eventually, and I never got back to focusing on that. So
Right.
anyways, sorry, long-winded, long story, but eventually now I've decided, and I've come to that, my vision is kind of more clear what I want to do. That is
Mm-hmm.
to be a mental performance coach and to help ball players and to coach and to teach hitting and outfield. And I like found this new passion for it. But it didn't come until the age of 35 now. It's about 31, 32 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy because then I found you, and I was just kind of looking for other like mental related like content on Instagram, and then I
Right.
found your account, and then I realized that you were that you're only 18,
Right.
right? You still 18?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a nephew that's your age, class of
Wow.
2020.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, what? No way. This kid is like, you've got it, man. You're on the right track. I mean, to be at your age and to see the power of the mental side in baseball and in life, like it's a huge head start on, not like it's a competition, but you're way ahead of kids your age. So I'm pretty impressed with that, and looking, interested to hear more about you and your story.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, I definitely love your story because I think a lot of people, like you, where they don't necessarily get to where they want to get to results wise. They sometimes tend to be, like you said, very bitter, and not a lot of people hear from guys like you where they had all these dreams, all these places they wanted to go, but didn't get there. And a lot of people just go straight down from there and never come out of that, because that was what since they grew up, they thought they were going to play in the big leagues. They thought they were going to be there for 10, 15 years. But when it doesn't happen, then what are you going to do? And I think you're a great example of somebody that takes that and uses it as a positive, where you can start helping other kids and helping other people, whether it's in baseball or, like you said, in life. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, leaving the world a better place than when you were when you got there. And that's huge, really.
Yeah, honestly, the baseball secondary.
Exactly.
I realize, oh, man, this stuff is like I needed this for my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, wait a minute. Then I finally got back into coaching, and then I'm like, wait a minute, these guys are acting like I used to act. Maybe not to the extreme, but
Mm-hmm.
some did, or some do. But then I'm like, man, I see myself in you. I see that the path that they're on, the mindset that they have. It's like, I want you. I don't really, like I said, it's all gift wrapped in baseball wrapping paper, but it's
Yep.
the real gift is not the baseball that I'm trying to give you. Yeah, it's great. I
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of experience. I think I have I'm very open-minded when in terms of like what works for certain players. What worked
Yep.
for me may not work for you. And so I'm willing to do the work to try and figure it out, piece the puzzle together to help each player.
Mm-hmm.
But the real gift, the real thing is that mental, that personal development side.
100%.
I found that passion and fire for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that Michael actually said in his podcast. And what was one of the big takeaways that I took out of doing that podcast with him was, he said when baseball became number one in his life, the performance, everything went downhill. And really what it does is when you recognize that, baseball is just something that you do, that you love doing, but it's not your whole life. That's when the pressure and the anxiety starts going down, and the results actually tend to go your way, because you're trusting yourself, you're just having fun, and you're doing what you've known how to do your whole life. And that's one of the big takeaways that I took from that podcast episode, because for me, naturally, I've always put so much pressure into myself and performing. Like, I'm not going to have to worry about putting enough pressure. Like there always is enough pressure for me personally. I naturally put enough pressure into it where I don't need to keep forcing it. Like if I keep forcing it, that's when I start going into a dangerous downward path, and kind of realizing, okay, it's more about, if you're on the field, it's about helping your teammates out, just building relationships with them, doing things that make you a good person, I think then come with the results on the field. And that's something that I've learned a lot during this whole journey is with Thought Force, is that baseball isn't the number one thing. And if it is, you're probably going to get to a dangerous road, because things are not going to go your way all the time. And if it's your number one, and then it starts screwing with, everything you're doing, like you said, off the field, it's just a bad place to be. And I've been there. I mean, even though I'm still young, like before probably the majority of my high school career, that like baseball was my number one thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I perceived it. And so when I started to struggle in games and stuff like that, like it was like the world was ending. Like, man, like there's no, that is like my thing. And I'm not going to say now, I'm not going to say now that I don't play baseball a lot. I mean, I still do it a ton. I mean, it's probably one of the things that I do the most, but the way I perceive it isn't, this is it. Like, it's just the perception of it. I still put, I just put the same amount of work in, if not more, because I'm playing at a higher level. But I don't perceive it as it being number one. Like number one is me being a good person, me spreading positivity to other people, me empowering other people. And that's really number one, is being able to impact other people, connect with other people, family, friends, whatever it is. And then baseball comes later in that list. And because of that, I found that, hey, if you go, for example, I just played on Saturday here. First game, I went 0 for 3 with 2 punchies and a walk. And I remember, I mean, if that would have happened to me 2 years ago, it would have been like, all right, that 0 for 3 turns into 0 for 12 pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
But then I followed that game up with very solid game, found a lot of barrels the next game. And it was because I wasn't taking it as, this is it. Like this isn't my whole life. That how I do on the baseball field isn't everything. And me noticing that, okay, I went 0 for 3 with 2 punchies. Who cares? Just kind of, for me, what works a lot when I face stuff like that, because I mean, it's going to happen. Like, this is my first time seeing live pitching in, I don't know, 6-7 months, because of the whole coronavirus and me.
Well, plus you're limited to your training too.
Right.
Exactly. Limited. You just can't go out there and have like simulated games and stuff. I mean, I don't know where you are. Where are you actually?
Right now, I'm actually in Utah. I'm playing it in a summer collegiate league, but I'm originally from Wisconsin.
Got it. Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I haven't seen live pitching in a long time.
Yeah.
And so the first game back, I mean, not gonna lie to you, it wasn't the most comfortable thing in the world, because I mean, I hadn't seen live pitching in a long time.
Oh man, I know the feeling.
Yeah. Right. And especially like on a field with the fielders and the fans and everything. And it's just a different thing. But if this would have happened to me 2 years ago, it would have been a completely different second game after that. Like, it would have been just a spiral effect of, oh boy, here we go. So instead of, being like, this batter's box is gold, like this is the best place to be, it would have been like, oh man, now it's time to go up again. Here comes another strikeout. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, exactly.
So I think, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, a good example of that, like in my career, like I was always a slow starter, like hitting wise every year, especially in pro ball. And it would take like almost every year, it was like almost about the same amount of time. Like, it would almost be like the first almost 100 at bats for me to really like get it together. Just because I always had this vision of myself, the expectations to come out, because I would always, like I said, I was always I had strong work ethic, like in terms of getting in shape and being ready for the season. So, but I had this vision in my head of how I was going to come out of the gates, just blazing, and that wasn't, I mean, that's good to have that like competitiveness, but you have to be realistic too. It's like, I'm going up against guys on the mound that worked hard all off season too, to be able to get guys like me out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, sometimes they're going to do their job and
Right.
you're not, and and I just realized that those slow starts, I would get so frustrated with myself.
Yeah.
And it would get worse, and it'd be like, and it was almost every beginning of every year was like the same, like tons of strikeouts, like literally there's the ball and I'm just, whew, just coming up empty. And one of those
Yep.
ones where you're just like looking at your bat, like, what
Yep.
the heck is going on?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I basically exhausted myself with the frustration that I would just say, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just go up there. And then, you know what? I'd go up there and I'd be just maybe a hair more relaxed, just because I'm kind of just like, whatever, it can't get any worse.
Mm-hmm.
And then square one up, bomb, gapper, something. And then all of a sudden I'm hot. Like, I'm like red hot in fuego, like the best hitter on the planet for like the next like month. But then I would end up repeating the cycle. So I would I'd hit like 350 and then I'd hit like, 180.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I never hit over 300 in pro ball. I was fully capable of doing it, but I was so hot, so cold. And I didn't know when I was cold, I didn't have the mental skills or like I said, the mindset, the perspective to get rid of that pressure. Just go up there and swing. Just know that that's part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get your back up there sooner, or you can hover somewhere in that, more of an even keel, right in that wave a little bit more, not so drastic.
Right. Yeah. And something to kind of go off of that is for guys that really struggle from going to really hot to really cold, something that obviously when you're hot, you want to kind of stay there. I mean, you don't want to really, for me, I don't want to mess with a whole lot. I just keep doing what I'm doing, and because it's obviously working. Yeah. But when I'm cold, something that really helps me out that for you guys that are listening might want to try out is, let's say you have a bad game, whether it's in the field, at the plate, whatever it is. I like to laugh at myself, like straight up. I like to physically smile at myself and just be like, man, that was bad, and just laugh it off and just be like, no big deal, like, here we go, let's do it again, and go right back at it. Instead of that, for me, just releases it. And I can't remember where I listened to this, but I actually found out that physically smiling and laughing it off has these chemicals go off in your body where you become happy, and you don't become angry, frustrated. And for me, when I used to get really frustrated and do bad, and I didn't really learn, like, hey, just laugh it off, like, just keep going, it would almost be like this panic mode, like, oh my gosh, like, I need to perform. And it just kept stacking up. And it becomes like embarrassing going on in the field. Like, that's what it was for me. Like, it was almost like a timeout when I was going out there. It was embarrassing. It felt like I was being humiliated. Yeah. But for any of you guys that might kind of relate to that, I'm sure some of you guys feel that when you're struggling, just laugh it off. And it's been something that really helps me out, and physically laughing it off. And if you don't want your teammates to see you laughing, even though you just went 0 for 5 or you're on 0 for 5 fifths, put your glove over your face, whatever it is, try to find a way to physically smile, laugh it off, and it'll just release all that tension, anxiety, and you'll just be able to trust whatever you're doing that you've known how to do your whole life. And it'll help you out. Even though, the results might not come right away, it puts you in a good spot. So,
oh, absolutely. I think understanding that, and that was one of the things that I found fascinating, was learning about the connection between the mind and your physiology. Mm-hmm. It's like how you can't think of a sad thought and smile at the same time.
Right.
And vice versa. Right. You can't, you can, by standing with your arms up or with your, like a Superman pose, that you can raise your testosterone levels,
right?
Like, type of stuff. And then, standing with your nose up, your chest, shoulders back, and chest out, like, you feel more confident. Like, that was fascinating to me. And I just really totally geeked out on it, as I'm getting into mental stuff. And it's so true. I mean, when you think back to when you're performing well, what's your body language like? Like, what are you thinking? And most of the time, and what's your focus? Like you might not be focused on anything because when you're just like red hot, which is another key point, thinking about nothing. Don't think. If you're not feeling confident, it's because you're probably thinking about why you're not confident, why I failed, why I, oh my God, I'm having a bad game. Oh, if I don't get a hit next at bat, I'm gonna go over. Now you're not feeling confident, and that's also your self-talk. It's like how you're talking to yourself, like which go hand in hand with your thoughts, right? So like what you said about the laughing, like that's huge. Like, and I feel like I've heard that before. People say it like, hey, just laugh it off, right? But they may not even know that what they're saying when they're saying it, though the intention and the concept is on point. But like you said, like for the guys listening, like force yourself, use it as a tool to change your mindset, to change your physiology from getting, because obviously if we're angry, frustrated, we get tense and rigid. We lose our athleticism. And so when you're loose and you're just having a good time and you're just smiling, even if you are faking it, you can still gain some momentum going in the direction of being more positive, just taking the pressure down, loosening up, and just playing the game. Big example, or the common example I use is Mike Trout. Have you ever seen that guy mad on the baseball field?
That's true. Yeah.
And you might say, well, yeah, I'd be smiling too if I'm making 30 million a year or whatever. But he's making 30 million a year because he's smiling all the time.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you just smile all the time, doesn't mean you're going to be Mike Trout, but you will be a better version of yourself as a player. You never give yourself a chance to become a Mike Trout if you're constantly worried about every single negative thing, especially the things that are out of your control. And I'm sure you talk about this a lot, controlling the controllables. I would focus so much on a bad pitch or a bad call, a bad at bat, I hit a ball in the gap, a guy makes a diving catch, I'm upset. Hey, what are you going to do?